You know that feeling of waking up one day and realizing you were just a pawn in a game that was never yours? That every word of love, every promise of partnership, every smile was just strategy? That's how I felt when I discovered that the man I called my partner, my associate, my brother in arms, had turned me into a ladder to reach the top, and then simply kicked me down the rungs. Before I tell you this story that still hurts when I breathe deeply, I need to ask you something. If you've ever trusted someone with your eyes closed, if you've ever built something with your own hands and watched someone else take the credit, if you've ever felt that sharp pain of realizing you were used, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because I need you to know you're not alone in that feeling of being too small to see the blow coming. And if my story can help you avoid making the same mistakes, then every word here will be worth it. I met Minho at a cafe in Gangnam, in the pulsing heart of Seoul, in the middle of winter 2019. I remember every detail of that day as if it were yesterday, not because it was special, but because it was the day my entire life changed direction. The cold cut through the skin like invisible blades, that kind of Korean cold that seeps into your bones and makes you doubt you ever felt warmth. The steam rising from the coffee cups seemed to be the only warm thing in the entire city, dancing in the frozen air before disappearing, like promises that never get fulfilled. I was 28 years old at the time, fresh out of computer science from Seoul National University, with a master's degree in artificial intelligence that I had completed with honors, burning the midnight oil, sacrificing weekends, giving up girlfriends who got tired of competing with code and algorithms. I was working at a large corporation, one of those enormous companies where you're just a number, a replaceable part in the machine. The salary was good, the benefits excellent, the stability guaranteed, but I felt dead inside. Every day was the same. Wake up at 6 a.m, crowded subway where I could barely breathe, arrive at the office at 8, soulless code, endless meetings where no one really listened to anyone, projects that made no difference in anyone's life, a boss who only knew how to demand results but never recognize effort, return home at 10 at night, sleep, repeat. It was as if I were drowning in calm waters, technically alive, but unable to truly breathe. My mother, who lived in Busan, always called me on Sundays. "Are you eating well?" she would ask, with that maternal concern that never ages. "Is work good? Are you happy?" And I always lied. "Yes, Mom. Everything's great." Because how do you explain to a woman who worked her entire life as a seamstress to pay for your education that, despite all the success on paper, you feel empty? It was in this state of mind that I accepted Minho's invitation to that cafe in Gangnam. We had met briefly at a technology conference a few months earlier. He had heard me present my thesis on neural networks applied to consumer behavior patterns. He approached me afterward, gave me his card, said he'd like to talk about opportunities. But you know how it is. Everyone says that at conferences. Rarely does anyone actually call. But Minho called. "I need to talk to you about something important," he said on the phone, his voice firm, decisive. "Something that could change your life. Are you up for coffee?" Something in his voice made me say yes. He was sitting at a corner table when I arrived, near the window overlooking the busy Gangnam Street. He was 32 years old but looked younger, hair perfectly slicked back, an impeccable gray suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, an expensive watch on his wrist. Not ostentation, but class. He had that gleam in his eyes that some people have when they truly believe in something. When they talk about dreams as if they were inevitable realities, destinies just waiting for time to materialize. He stood when he saw me, extended his hand with a broad and genuine smile. "You came. Great. Please sit. Want to order something?" I ordered an Americano. He was already on his second. "I'll be direct with you," Minho said, leaning over the small table between us, his eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that made me sit straighter. "I'm building something revolutionary, something that will change the Korean market, maybe the entire Asian market. An artificial intelligence platform that will connect small Korean businesses to the global market in a way that's never been done before." He paused, took a sip of coffee, watched me to see if I was paying attention. I was, completely. Machine learning to predict consumer trends, real-time predictive market analysis, process automation that today takes days and transforms them into minutes. Connecting small Korean entrepreneurs with global suppliers, international buyers, worldwide trends, democratizing access to the global market for those who don't have millions to invest in expensive consulting. As he spoke, his hands moved in the air, drawing the vision, and I could see it. I could see every part of the platform forming in my mind: the architecture, the algorithms, the infinite possibilities. The Korean market is ripe for this, he continued, his eyes shining brighter with each word. We have thousands of incredible small businesses making fantastic products, but they can't compete globally because they don't have resources, they don't have knowledge, they don't have access. Our platform will change that. It will level the playing field. For the first time in months, I felt something ignite inside me, a small spark, but real. Why are you looking for me? I asked, turning the cup between my hands, feeling the warmth pass through the porcelain. Minho smiled. That smile that I would later learn was his most powerful weapon, confident, warm, absolutely convincing. Because you're the best, he responded without hesitation, without false modesty. I saw your thesis on neural networks, read every word. It's brilliant. You have a technical mind like I've never seen. You think in layers, in possibilities, in solutions that no one else can see. And more importantly, you have passion. I saw it in your eyes when you were presenting. You weren't just showing academic research. You were showing your soul. No one had ever talked about my work like that. At the corporation where I was just the developer on the third floor. My bosses barely knew my name. And here was this man, this well-dressed stranger, telling me I was brilliant. It's amazing how vulnerable we are when someone finally sees us. I have the business vision, Minho continued. I have the contacts in the corporate world. I know investors. I know how to sell, how to pitch, how to close deals. I studied business administration at Stanford, worked at 3 successful startups. I know exactly how to scale a company. But I don't have what you have, the technical capability to transform vision into reality. I need you. And you, he paused, studying me. You need something that makes you feel alive again. I saw it in your eyes when you arrived here. Exhaustion, boredom, silent desperation. You're dying at that corporate job, aren't you? I swallowed hard. How did he know? Together, he said, extending his hand over the table, that hand that seemed to hold the future. We can build something immense, something that matters, something that changes lives. I looked at that extended hand, looked at his eyes, so full of certainty, looked out the window, at the busy streets of Gangnam, at the people running from one side to another, chasing their dreams, or fleeing from their fears. Partners, Minho said, 50% for each of us. You handle all the technical part, development, architecture, innovation, everything involving code and technology. I handle the rest, clients, investors, growth, money, market strategy, fair division, equal division. We're true partners, not boss and employee. What do you say? Little did I know that question would change everything. I looked at that extended hand again, and in that moment, deep in my soul, a little voice whispered, "Careful," but I ignored it, because I was so desperate for meaning, so tired of sameness, so thirsty for something real, that I chose to believe instead of question. "Partners," I said, shaking his hand. That handshake sealed my fate. But on that frozen afternoon in Gangnam, while we drank coffee and made plans, I still didn't know I was making a pact with someone who saw people as resources, not as partners. The first months were magical, pure adrenaline coursing through my veins, a feeling of finally doing something that mattered, something that had weight in the real world. I quit my corporate job on a rainy Friday in March. My boss didn't even try to convince me to stay. I just signed the papers, returned my badge, cleaned out my desk, left that building without looking back. The following Monday, my new life began. Minho had rented a small office in Itaewon, in that vibrant and multicultural neighborhood of Seoul, where American soldiers from the nearby base mixed with Koreans, where the smell of Korean barbecue rose from restaurants and invaded the open windows, where music in 5 different languages played simultaneously on the streets. The office was on the 3rd floor of an old 4-story building that creaked when the wind blew hard, with narrow stairs that made noise with every step. It was just 2 rooms on the 3rd floor, an open space for work, another smaller one for meetings. The walls had peeling paint in some corners. The carpet was old and stained. The windows closed poorly and let the cold in. But it had a view of the busy streets of Itaewon, of life happening down below, of the future we were building. We bought 2 used desks at a nearby thrift store, uncomfortable office chairs that I found in an online ad, a cheap coffee maker that made a horrible noise but worked. I set up my workstation, 3 monitors that I bought myself with my savings, a mechanical keyboard that my fingers knew by heart, a gaming mouse that had been with me for years. That small and cheap space became my sanctuary, my battlefield, my home. I worked like I had never worked before, 20 hours a day, sometimes more. Woke up at 6 in the morning, arrived at the office at 7, left at 1, 2, 3 in the morning. Weekends no longer existed. Holidays were just quieter days to work without interruptions. While Soul slept, I was awake, typing, testing, fixing bugs, creating complex algorithms that seemed to have a life of their own, that learned, evolved, adapted. My fingers flew over the keyboard with a speed I didn't even know I possessed. The sound of clicking keys became music, rhythmic, constant, hypnotic. Coffee became my main fuel. Strong Americano, no sugar, black as the soul night. Sometimes I forgot to drink it and the coffee would get cold on the desk, an oily film forming on the surface. Sometimes I drank 10 cups in a day. My heart raced, my hands trembled slightly, but my mind was sharper than ever. I created the central architecture of the platform in 3 months of uninterrupted work. A machine learning system capable of analyzing millions of data points in real time, consumer behavior patterns, market trends, supply and demand flows, economic forecasts. I developed algorithms that could identify business opportunities even before they became obvious to human eyes. I implemented intuitive interfaces, because what good is having the most advanced technology if no one can use it? I spent weeks testing every button, every menu, every action flow. I wanted even my mother, who barely knew how to use a cell phone, to be able to navigate the platform without confusion. I built state-of-the-art security systems, end-to-end encryption, protection against cyber attacks, automatic backups on multiple servers, 2-factor authentication, constant monitoring of suspicious activities. Nothing could fail. Nothing could leak. The trust of our future users depended on it. Every line of code was mine. Every algorithm carried my digital signature, my way of thinking, my logic. My DNA was imprinted on that system. It was more than work. It was creation. It was art. It was me poured into zeros and ones. My back hurt from hours sitting in that uncomfortable chair. My vision blurred when I looked at the screens for too long. I developed a constant pain in my right wrist from so much typing. I lost 6 kilograms in the first month because I forgot to eat. My hair started falling out more than normal from stress. Permanent dark circles settled under my eyes. But I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because finally, I was doing something that mattered. Minho, meanwhile, did his part. And I had to admit, he was brilliant at what he did. He had a natural gift for sales that I could never have. He could walk into any meeting room and come out with a new client or an interested investor. His confidence was contagious, his charisma undeniable. He knew everyone, or at least it seemed like it. He was always at business lunches, dinners with investors, technology conferences, networking events. He always came back with business cards, new contacts, promises of future meetings. "Met the Samsung director today," he would say, throwing his jacket on the chair. "He's very interested in what we're doing. We scheduled a presentation for next month." Or, "That venture capital fund in Gangnam wants to meet us. Prepare a demo of the platform." Something impressive. When Minho talked about our vision, about the future of technology in Korea, about how we were going to change the market, people believed. He had a way of painting the future with words that made it seem inevitable, already guaranteed, just waiting to happen. And I believed too. How could I not? We were partners, brothers in battle. 2 sides of the same coin. He, the public face, the seller, the strategist. Me, the technical brain, the builder, the innovator. On cold winter nights, when the wind cut through the poorly sealed windows of our office, and I was buried in code for 18 hours straight, Minho would show up with soju and side dishes, fermented and spicy kimchi, steaming hot dumplings, grilled pork wrapped in lettuce, those Korean peanuts I loved. We would sit on the cold floor of that small office, eat with our hands, drink from the bottle, talk about the future. "We're almost there," he would say, his eyes shining with that unshakable certainty that made me believe in impossible things. Just a little more, and we're going to explode. What you're building is revolutionary. No one in Korea has anything like this. "Do you really think so?" I would ask, exhausted, barely able to keep my eyes open, exhaustion weighing on every muscle. I don't think. I know. I've worked at 3 startups before, seen a lot of ideas. But this is different. This is going to change everything. And when it happens, when we really explode, we'll both be at the top. Partners. Always. Always. That word sounded so beautiful. So secure. I believed him. How could I not? We shared everything. The dreams. The fears. The sleepless nights. The cheap food. The vision of a bright future. He was more than my partner. He was my friend. My brother. At least that's what I thought. I still didn't know that always has an expiration date when you're dealing with someone who sees relationships as terminable contracts. In June 2020, we launched the beta version of the platform. My heart was beating so hard on launch day that I thought I was going to have an attack. It was months of work, sleepless nights, sacrifices, all summed up in a publish button. Minho organized a small launch event. He invited tech press, bloggers, some small business owners who had been interested in our proposal. I was too nervous to speak in public, so he did the entire presentation while I stayed backstage, monitoring the servers, praying that everything would work perfectly. And it worked. In 1 week, we had 1,000 users, real people, with real businesses, using the platform I had created. Each new registration notification made my heart race. Each positive feedback filled me with a joy I hadn't felt in years. In 1 month, 10,000 users. The platform was working perfectly. The algorithms I had created were frighteningly accurate. Small businesses using our system were seeing their profits increase by 20, 30, sometimes 50%. They could identify trends before their competitors, optimize their supply chains, find better and cheaper suppliers, predict demand with surgical precision. Word of mouth spread like wildfire. Business owners talked to business owners, posts on social media, articles on business blogs. The platform was going viral organically. Minho was ecstatic. You see? You see? I told you it was going to explode. He shouted around the office, jumping like a child. And I laughed, finally letting some of the tension out, finally believing that yes, maybe we had really created something special. With growth came challenges. The servers started getting overloaded. We needed to scale the infrastructure, and fast. I spent days without sleep migrating the entire system to a more robust cloud architecture, implementing load balancing, optimizing database queries. Bugs appeared. Of course they appeared. They always do. But I hunted them down one by one, fixing, improving, polishing. In August 2020, Minho secured our first real investment round, 5 million won from a venture capital fund in Gangnam. I remember when he arrived at the office with the signed contract, throwing the papers in the air like confetti. "We did it!" he shouted. 5 million! Now we go! We used the money strategically. Minho wanted to spend on aggressive marketing, but I convinced him to start with the foundation. We hired our first female developer, a young and talented woman named Jisoo, fresh out of college, with hungry eyes just like mine when I started. We hired a UX designer to improve the interface, an infrastructure professional to help me with the servers. We moved to a larger office, still in Ida 1. 3 rooms now, windows that actually closed, comfortable chairs, new desks, a small kitchen with a microwave and refrigerator. It felt like luxury after that first precarious space. But even with the team growing, I was still the brain behind everything. Every new feature passed through my hands. Every crucial technical decision was mine, and I liked it that way. It was my baby, my creation. The following months were a blur of intense work. In December 2020, we had 50,000 users. In March 2021, 100,000. Each milestone was celebrated with soju in the office, with hugs, with that intoxicating feeling that we were really building something big. But something started to change subtly in Minho. Or perhaps he had always been like this and I was starting to pay attention. He started referring to the company as my company instead of our company, my platform instead of our platform. Small verbal slips that I ignored because, well, he was in meetings all day selling the vision. It made sense that he would appropriate the narrative, or at least that's what I convinced myself. He started making decisions without consulting me, hiring people I didn't even know, making promises to clients about features that didn't exist yet, putting me under impossible pressure to deliver. "Why didn't you consult me before promising this?" I would ask, frustrated, looking at another list of impossible features with a 2-week deadline. "Because you're too busy coding," he would respond, without even looking up from his laptop. I handle the business side, remember? Just do what you do best, create. And I would return to my code, swallowing the frustration, convincing myself that he was right, that this was our division of labor. Mal sabia eu que cada pequena decisão tomada sem mim era tijolo a mais no muro que ele estava construindo entre nós. In 2021, when the pandemic hit Korea with full force, the entire world stopped. But for us, it was the opposite. We exploded. With everyone working from home, with companies desperate to adapt to digital, with e-commerce becoming essential overnight, our platform became not just useful, but necessary. Small businesses that had never considered selling online suddenly had no choice, and our platform made it easy, almost automatic. We went from 100,000 users to 500,000 in 6 months, from 500,000 to 1 million in 3 more. The numbers were so absurd that I had to check multiple times to make sure it wasn't a system error. Our office became an anthill. We hired 10 more people, then 15 more. Developers, designers, marketing professionals, salespeople, customer support. We needed to move again, this time to Gangnam, to a modern glass building with a view of the entire city. Now we had an entire floor, a real meeting room with a large glass table, an equipped kitchen with a professional espresso machine, clean and modern bathrooms, a game room for employees to relax, even a small gym. It felt like we had arrived. We did our second investment round, 50 million won. Minho was absolutely radiant. Large venture capital funds were now courting us. Forbes Korea published an article about us, the startup that's revolutionizing digital commerce in Korea. Then came the third round, 200 million won. Investors from Seoul, Tokyo, San Francisco wanted a piece of the company. Everyone wanted to be associated with our success. Minho negotiated brilliantly, always maintaining our majority stake, always saying he was protecting us. We'll never lose control of our company, he assured me. This is ours, always. Again that word, always. In 2022, we reached 15 million users. 15 million people using something I had created. 15 million businesses running better because of my code. The magnitude of it sometimes left me breathless. We made giant partnerships. Samsung, LG, Naver, Kakao. Our platform was being used by half of South Korea's small and medium-sized businesses. We were more than a sensation. We were essential infrastructure in Korea's digital economy. The media called us the next big thing in Asian technology. Forbes Korea put us on the list of the 10 most promising startups. Minho was on the cover of a business magazine, smiling confidently in his expensive suit, the company building in the background. I was in the photo too, but much smaller, in the corner, identified only as CTO. At the time, I didn't think much about it. After all, Minho was the public face. It made sense that he would be the highlight. I was the technical guy, the one behind the scenes. I was okay with that. Or at least I convinced myself I was. My personal life had completely disappeared. I no longer had friends. They all got tired of refused invitations, unanswered messages. I had no hobbies. I had no love life. Who would have time? I stopped going to the gym completely. My calls with my mother in Busan became rarer, shorter, more superficial. "Are you okay?" she would ask, and I heard the concern in her voice. "I'm great, Mom. Just busy. The company is growing a lot. But are you taking care of yourself? Eating well? Sleeping?" Lies flowed easily. "Yes, Mom. I'm fine. I love you. I have to go." Everything was the company. Everything was work. Everything was that dream we were building. I worked even more. Now, not just creating, but managing a technical team of 20 people, reviewing code, doing architecture, making decisions about scalability, security, performance. The pressure was absurd, but I loved it. Because finally, I was doing something that mattered, something that had real impact. But something kept changing in Minho. The changes were subtle, incremental, the kind you only notice when you look back and compare photos from different years. He was less present in the office, always in external meetings, always traveling to meet investors, always at events. When he was in the office, he spent more time closed in his room than interacting with the team. He started bringing in advisors, a personal corporate lawyer, a financial consultant, an executive coach, people who whispered in his ear in meetings, who advised him in private, and he started talking differently about me, not directly to me, but I heard through others. Jisoo, the developer I had hired, approached me one day with a worried expression. "Can I tell you something? she asked quietly, looking around to make sure no one was listening. Sure. What is it? Yesterday, I heard Minho on a call. He was talking to someone, some investor, I think. And he said you were just the tech guy, that the vision was all his, that you just executed. My stomach tightened. Must have been a misunderstanding, I said, more to convince myself than her. But Jisoo shook her head. It wasn't a misunderstanding. I heard clearly. And it wasn't the first time. He's been talking about you like that for months. To investors, to new employees, to everyone. As if you were replaceable. Replaceable. That word echoed in my head for the rest of the day, for the rest of the week, for the following months. But I kept working, kept creating, kept believing that, in the end, the truth would prevail. That our partnership agreement, our handshake, our friendship, meant something. But as you learn too quickly when reality finally hits, some handshakes are just temporary contracts waiting to be terminated at the convenient moment. It was on a day in May 2023 that everything changed. Or rather, it was when I finally discovered that everything had already changed a long time ago, and I was the only idiot who hadn't noticed. We were preparing our 4th investment round. Absurd amounts now, 900 million won. American, Chinese, Japanese funds, all wanting a piece. Minho was in constant meetings, negotiating terms, structuring the deal. One day, he walked into my office with a stack of documents. I need you to sign this, he said, throwing the papers on my desk with that casualness of someone asking you to sign a receipt. What is it? I asked, picking up the first page. Standard corporate documentation. Corporate restructuring to facilitate the investment. Our lawyers prepared it. Everyone already signed, me, the investors, the board. Just need you. I started flipping through. It was many pages, complex legal language, full of hereinafter referred to as subsequent clause, previously agreed terms. It's a lot of text, I said. I need time to read it carefully. Minho sighed, impatient. Don't you trust me? After everything we built together? It's just legal formalities. Our lawyer already reviewed everything. It's all in order. And we need to send this by tomorrow, or we lose the timing of the investment. I looked at him. At those eyes I had learned to trust. At that face that had become as familiar as the reflection in the mirror. Did you review it personally? I asked. Of course. Everything's fine. Trust me, partner. Partner. That word that used to warm me inside. I picked up the pen and signed. Page after page, I put my signature. Without reading properly. Without questioning. Because I trusted. Because we were partners. Because after 3 years building something together, side by side, how could I not trust? How do you measure the weight of a signature? How do you calculate the value of a pen touching paper? In that moment, it seemed like just another formality in a journey of countless formalities. Just another document in a pile of documents. I didn't know I was signing my own destruction. Have you ever trusted someone so much that you didn't even read what you were signing? If you have, tell me in the comments. Because I need to know I wasn't the only idiot who confused loyalty with blindness. And if you learned this lesson the hard way like me, leave your story here. Sometimes sharing the pain is the first step to not repeating the mistake. The following months were bizarre, subtly bizarre. Nothing dramatic happened. No explosion, no confrontation, no obvious moment of betrayal. But small things started changing in ways I couldn't name, but that made my stomach churn. Minho started excluding me from important meetings. You don't need to come. It's just boring business talk, he would say. Meetings with investors, with strategic partners, with board members I didn't even know existed. He started bringing in more outside people. Directors, vice presidents, an entire executive tier that I hadn't hired, that I didn't even know, who reported directly to Minho and treated me like an employee, not like a partner, like an employee. Can you deliver this report by Thursday? Someone would ask me, as if I had to report to them. We need you to prioritize this project, another would say, not asking, ordering. And when I looked at Minho seeking support, seeking that recognition of partnership, he would look away. I complained once, on an afternoon after a particularly humiliating meeting where I was basically treated like a junior developer in my own company. Minho, we need to talk. He was on his laptop, as always. About how I'm being treated, about these people you hired who treat me like a subordinate. I'm a co-founder. I'm a partner. I have 50% of this company. Finally, he looked at me, and there was something in his eyes I had never seen before. Something cold, calculating. "You're right," he said. "I'll talk to them. Sorry. It's just that everything is growing so fast that sometimes things get confusing." But nothing changed. If anything, it got worse. I started having problems accessing certain internal systems. My password wouldn't work. "Must be a system error," they said. But it took days to resolve. I started discovering decisions already made without my consultation. Contracts signed, partnerships closed, strategic changes implemented. I wasn't consulted about this, I would say. "Sorry, we thought you were too busy with the technical side," they would respond. "We didn't want to overload you." Overload. As if consulting the co-founder was an overload. And then came the day that changed everything. The day when the penny finally dropped with a crash that made my entire world crumble. It was on a rainy day in June 2024. The kind of rain that falls heavy in soul and makes the entire city seem covered by a gray and sad curtain. The kind of rain that makes you feel like even the sky is crying, like even God is sad about what's about to happen. I was in the office, alone on the technical floor, working on a performance issue that had been bothering me for days. It was 9 at night. The office was almost empty, just security guards and some lost souls like me who didn't know when to go home. My cell phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello? Good evening. Am I speaking with my name?" Male voice, formal, American accent. "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Robert Chen. I'm managing partner at Pinnacle Ventures, an investment fund based in San Francisco. We were involved in the last investment round of your company." My heart raced. Why would an investor be calling me directly? "Yes, I know who Pinnacle is. How can I help you?" There was a pause that was too long. "I first want to congratulate you on the successful sale of your part of the company. It was a very well-structured transaction. Minho is really a skilled negotiator." The words reached my ears, but my brain took a few seconds to process them, as if they were in another language, as if they made as much sense as equations written in alien alphabet. What sale?" I finally managed to say, my voice coming out strange, distant, as if it belonged to someone else. Silence on the other end. A loaded silence, heavy, aware. "You don't know?" Robert Chen asked, and there was genuine surprise in his voice. "Minho didn't tell you?" My blood froze. I literally felt the cold spreading from my hands to my arms, from my chest to my stomach. "Tell me what? What are you talking about?" Another pause, and when he spoke again, there was embarrassment in his voice. "Maybe I shouldn't be the one telling you this. But in the documentation of the last investment round, there's a transfer of shares. You sold your 50% stake to Minho for a symbolic amount, 10 million won. The transaction was registered 2 months ago. Technically, you're no longer a partner. You're an employee, CTO with a standard employment contract." The world stopped. It's not a figure of speech. The world literally stopped. The rain froze in the air. The sounds of the office, the hum of the air conditioning, the distant noise of traffic disappeared. My heart stopped beating. My lungs forgot how to breathe. That's not possible," I said, or thought I said. "There must be some mistake. I would never sell. I would never sign something like that." "Well," Robert Chen said delicately, "your signature is on the documents. It's all very clear. That's why we assumed it was your decision, that maybe you wanted to follow another path, start something new. Minho said it was amicable." Amicable. The word ricocheted in my head. "I need to hang up," I said. "Of course. I'm sorry if I was the bearer of bad news." The call ended, and I sat in that chair, in that office I had helped build, surrounded by code I had written, looking at the lights of Seoul through the window blurred by rain. And I finally understood. Those documents he asked me to sign in May, that corporate restructuring, that stack of papers I signed without reading because I trusted. I had signed my own execution. In that moment, alone in that dark office with rain beating on the windows, I learned the most painful lesson of my life. Trust without vigilance is not a virtue. It's naivety. And in the business world, the naive are just resources waiting to be exploited. I don't know how long I sat there. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. Time had lost meaning. Everything had lost meaning. My mind raced in circles trying to find an alternative explanation. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the investor was misinformed. Maybe there was confusion in the documentation. Maybe. But deep down, in that silent place where truth lives before we turn it into words, I knew. I always knew. Or at least, Part of me always knew. All those little signs, all those subtle changes, the way he started talking about the company as his, the way he excluded me from decisions, the way he allowed others to treat me as a subordinate. They weren't signs of a friendship deteriorating. They were signs of a plan being executed. I was so stupid, so pathetic. But as I sat there in that dark office, something inside me started to change. Something hard, something cold, something that burned with a different kind of fire. Sadness was transforming into something else, something more powerful. Rage. I didn't go home that night. Stayed in the office until dawn, sitting in the dark, the lights of Seoul my only company, my mind working, processing, planning. By the time the sun started to rise over the Han River, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to accept this. I wasn't going to let him win. I wasn't going to let 3 years of my life, my creation, my soul poured into code, be stolen without a fight. I was going to war. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the best corporate litigation lawyer in Seoul, a woman named Kim Sora, 50 years old, with a reputation for never losing a corporate fraud case. She was expensive, absurdly expensive, but I didn't care. I would use every one of my savings if necessary. We met in her office in Gangnam that same afternoon. A modern space with windows overlooking the city, shelves full of legal books, awards on the walls from cases won. I told her everything, showed her the documents I had signed, explained the history of the company, my role, Minho's promises, the partnership agreement we had made. She listened in silence, occasionally taking notes, her experienced eyes analyzing every detail. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "This is going to be difficult," she said, "but not impossible." My heart jumped. "What do you mean?" "Your signature is on the documents. That's undeniable. But," she picked up the papers, flipped through them carefully, "there are several problems with this transaction that we can explore." She started listing, ticking off on her fingers. "First, there's no indication in the documents that you received independent legal advice before signing. In transactions of this magnitude, that's standard. The absence suggests coercion or fraud. Second, the symbolic value, 10 million won for 50% of a company valued at billions. That's what we call gross inadequacy of consideration. It's so disproportionate that it suggests the transaction wasn't legitimate. Third, and most important, you have extensive documentation proving you created the core intellectual property of this company. Every line of code has your fingerprint. You can prove that without you, this company literally wouldn't exist." She looked directly into my eyes. "If you're willing to fight, if you're willing to go through months, maybe years of legal battle, if you're willing to have your life exposed, to face pressure and retaliation, I think we have a strong case." "I'm willing," I said without hesitation. "Whatever it takes." She smiled. A small, satisfied smile. "Then let's destroy his empire." Sometimes the betrayal that breaks you is the same one that teaches you to be unbreakable. And when you rise from the ashes of trust destroyed, you don't rise as the person who fell. You rise as something much more dangerous, someone who has nothing left to lose. The following 6 months were the most intense of my life, more intense even than the years building the company, because now I wasn't creating. I was fighting. Kim Sora and her team worked like surgical machines. We gathered evidence. Every email I had ever sent, every commit in the code repository with my name, every document showing my involvement in technical decisions, every testimony from employees who knew I was the technical brain. We documented everything: the dates, the meetings, the promises, the partnership agreement, even though it was verbal, could be corroborated by witnesses who heard Minho call me partner hundreds of times. We found flaws in the legal documentation, clauses that didn't make sense, omissions that were suspicious, timelines that didn't add up. And then, we attacked. We filed a lawsuit in Seoul Central District Court. The lawsuit was massive: 200 pages of documentation, evidence, legal arguments. We requested the nullification of the share transfer. We requested the return of my 50% stake. We requested retroactive profits. We requested damages for fraud. The lawsuit was devastating in its detail. Every lie, every manipulation, every step of Minho's plan was exposed in cold legal language. When the lawsuit became public, the media exploded. Headlines everywhere. Tech startup co-founder sues for fraud. The dark side of Korea's startup success story. Did Minho steal his partner's company? Minho tried to control the narrative. He gave interviews saying I was a disgruntled ex-employee, that I had voluntarily sold my shares, that I was trying to extort the company. But Kim Sora was smarter. She released carefully curated pieces of evidence to the press, emails where Minho referred to me as partner, code repository showing I had written 87% of the platform, testimonies from early employees describing our 50-50 agreement. Public opinion started to shift. The investors started to panic, because if the court ruled in my favor, their investments could be at risk. The company's valuation could crash. Everything could collapse. Pressure mounted on Minho from all sides. The first hearing was in September 2024. I remember walking into that courtroom, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The room was full. Journalists, lawyers, curious onlookers, some of our employees who had come to support me. Minho sat on the other side with his team of 5 expensive lawyers. When our eyes met, I saw something I had never seen before in him: fear. The proceedings dragged on for months, hearing after hearing, testimonies, expert witnesses, technical analysis, financial audits. Minho's lawyers tried everything. They argued I was just an employee from the beginning. They brought witnesses who contradicted the partnership story. They tried to discredit my technical contributions. But Kim Sora dismantled every argument. She was brutal in her precision. Every lie was exposed, every contradiction highlighted, every attempt at manipulation turned against them. The judge, a serious man in his 60s named Park Jin-woo, seemed increasingly skeptical of Minho's version. But the fight wasn't just in court. Minho tried other tactics. He tried to intimidate me, had people follow me, spread rumors in the tech community that I was unstable, vindictive, unethical, tried to blacklist me from future job opportunities. He tried to buy me off. Through intermediaries, he offered settlements. First 20 million won, then 50, then 100. Just drop the lawsuit and move on. I refused everything, because this wasn't about money anymore. This was about justice, about truth, about making sure that people like him don't get away with destroying people like me. The pressure was immense. There were days I wanted to give up. Days when the lawyers' bills, the public scrutiny, the emotional exhaustion felt like too much. But every time I thought about quitting, I remembered that office in Itaewon, those 20-hour days, those lines of code I wrote with bleeding fingers, that trust I gave so freely, and I kept fighting. If you've ever felt like giving up on something that matters, write "I keep fighting" in the comments, because sometimes we need to remember that perseverance isn't about never wanting to quit. It's about choosing to continue even when every part of you wants to stop. The turning point came in December 2024. 6 months into the legal battle, the judge ordered a comprehensive forensic audit of the company. Experts went through everything, every financial transaction, every contract, every communication, every line of code. And what they found was damning. Not only did they confirm that I had created the core technology, they found evidence of Minho's systematic plan to push me out. Emails to his lawyer from months before asking about legal ways to dilute a partner's stake. Messages to advisors discussing transitioning from partnership to employment. He had been planning this for over a year. The audit also uncovered other problems: financial irregularities, money transferred to offshore accounts, contracts with shell companies he controlled, tax evasion, fraud beyond just what he did to me. When Kim Sora showed me the forensic report, her eyes were gleaming. "We don't just have him for the share transfer," she said. "We have him for everything." The prosecutor's office took notice. What started as a civil lawsuit was now attracting criminal investigation. Minho's investors started jumping ship. No one wanted to be associated with potential fraud and criminal activity. Company valuation plummeted. Partnerships were suspended. Samsung and LG put their relationships under review. The empire was crumbling. The final hearing was in February 2025. The courtroom was packed. Every seat filled. Cameras outside. The case had become a sensation. A David versus Goliath story that captivated the public. Judge Park Jin-woo entered, and everyone stood. He sat, looked at both sides, and began. "I have reviewed all evidence presented in this case. Testimonies from 37 witnesses, expert reports, financial audits, technical analysis, and I have reached a conclusion." My heart was beating so fast I thought I might pass out. The defendant, Minho, claims the plaintiff voluntarily sold his shares for 10 million won. However, the evidence overwhelmingly contradicts this narrative. He went through the evidence systematically. The disproportionate value, the lack of independent legal counsel, the documentation showing I created the core intellectual property, the testimonies confirming our partnership agreement. Most damning, the judge continued, are the communications discovered in the forensic audit, showing the defendant planned to fraudulently remove the plaintiff from the company he helped create. He looked directly at Minho. This court finds the share transfer to be null and void. The transaction was obtained through fraud and misrepresentation. Furthermore, the defendant's actions constitute breach of fiduciary duty and corporate fraud. I couldn't breathe. Therefore, this court orders the following. First, the share transfer is nullified. The plaintiff's 50% stake in the company is restored, effective immediately. Second, the plaintiff is entitled to all profits and distributions from which he was excluded, calculated at approximately 300 million won. Third, the defendant is ordered to pay punitive damages of 100 million won for fraud and bad faith. The courtroom erupted. Journalists scrambled to report. Minho's lawyers were already whispering urgently. I just sat there, tears streaming down my face. Kim Sora put her hand on my shoulder. We won. But it wasn't over. Justice in court is just the beginning. Real justice is what happens when the truth finally catches up with the lies. With the court ruling, everything accelerated. I immediately called for an extraordinary shareholders meeting. With my restored 50% stake and the support of some minority investors who were furious about Minho's fraud, I had enough votes. The meeting was brutal. I presented not just the court ruling, but all the additional evidence from the forensic audit, the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the financial irregularities. The board had no choice. Minho was removed as CEO, effective immediately. But I didn't stop there. I shared all the evidence with the prosecutor's office. Within a week, Minho was under formal criminal investigation for corporate fraud, tax evasion, and embezzlement. Within 2 weeks, his assets were frozen. Within a month, he was indicted on multiple criminal charges. The media had a field day. The man who had been on magazine covers, who had been celebrated as a tech visionary, was now the face of startup fraud. His reputation was destroyed utterly and completely. Investors who had once courted him now sued him. Partners cut all ties. His name became toxic in Korean business circles. The company itself went through turmoil. Many employees quit, not wanting to be associated with the scandal. Some clients suspended their contracts. The valuation crashed. But here's the thing. The core technology was still solid, because it was mine, and I knew how to rebuild. I spent the next 6 months restructuring everything, hired new management, brought in ethical leadership, implemented proper corporate governance, made the company transparent. Slowly, confidence returned. Clients came back. New investors, ones who valued integrity, came aboard. Employees who believed in the mission joined us. By the end of 2025, the company was stable again. Not as explosively growing as before, but sustainable, ethical, real. I took the role of CEO myself, not because I wanted the title, but because I wanted to prove that you can build something successful without stepping on people, without lies, without betrayal. As for Minho, his trial is ongoing as I record this. He faces up to 10 years in prison if convicted on all charges. His lawyers are trying to negotiate a plea deal, but prosecutors aren't budging. They want to make an example of him. Everything he built, or rather, everything he stole, has crumbled to dust. And me? I'm still here, standing in the office I helped create, running the company I built with my own hands, working with a team that respects and trusts me. If this story touched you, if you believe that justice is possible, even when everything seems lost, help me continue telling stories like this. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't give up, ever. Today, I sometimes walk past that cafe in Gangnam, where it all started. The steam still rises from the Americanos the same way. People still sit at those small tables making deals, forming partnerships, dreaming dreams. But when I look through that window now, I don't see a naive dreamer believing every promise. I see a survivor. Minho taught me a lesson I'll never forget. Trust people, but always protect yourself. Read every contract. Verify every promise. And when they betray you, don't cry. Fight. Because in Korea, there's a proverb that says, 호랑이에게 물려가도 정신만 차리면 산다, which means, even in the tiger's mouth, if you keep your mind clear, you will survive. I survived, and this time, I am the tiger. My mother came to visit me last week, took the train from Busan, brought side dishes she had prepared, hugged me tighter than usual. "You look different," she said, studying my face. "Older, but stronger." "I am stronger, Mom. Much stronger." "Are you happy?" she asked. The question she had asked 100 times before. The question I had lied about so many times. This time, I didn't lie. "Yes, Mom. For the first time in years, I'm actually happy. Not because everything is perfect, but because I know who I am now. I know what I'm capable of, and I know I'll never let anyone make me small again." She smiled, tears in her eyes. That's all a mother wants to hear. The tech community talks about our case now. Business schools use it as a study on corporate fraud and the importance of proper documentation. Startup founders reach out to me asking for advice on protecting themselves. I always tell them the same thing. Get everything in writing. No matter how much you trust someone, especially if you trust someone. Because trust without documentation is just faith, and faith doesn't hold up in court. Some people think I'm bitter now, cynical, that I've lost faith in humanity. They're wrong. I haven't lost faith. I've gained wisdom. There's a difference. I still believe in partnerships. I still believe in trust. I still believe in dreams. But now I also believe in contracts, in lawyers, in protecting yourself while hoping for the best. That's not cynicism. That's survival. Last month, we hit 20 million users. The platform is better than ever. I've spent the last year improving it, adding features, making it more robust. Without Minho's pressure for unrealistic deadlines, without his focus on growth at all costs, I can build things properly. We're profitable. We're ethical. We're sustainable. And most importantly, we're honest. Every employee knows exactly where the company stands. Every contract is transparent. Every partnership is fair. We've implemented corporate governance that makes fraud nearly impossible. This is what success should look like. Not smoke and mirrors, not manipulation and lies, but real value, real innovation, real integrity. Every comment here is a living story. Leave yours, because deep down, we all just want to be heard and to achieve justice. I still work long hours, but now it's by choice, not by desperation. I've hired a strong technical team, so I'm not carrying everything alone. I've learned to delegate, to trust, but verify. I've started going to the gym again, made some new friends, even went on a few dates, though nothing serious yet. I'm still learning how to trust in personal relationships after what happened. My therapist, yes, I see a therapist now, says that's normal, that betrayal trauma takes time to heal, that I need to be patient with myself. I'm trying. There are nights when I still think about it all, about that moment in the cafe when I shook Minho's hand, about all those times I saw the red flags but ignored them, about how different things could have been if I had just read those documents before signing. But then I remember, if all of that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be who I am now. I'm not grateful for the betrayal. I'll never be grateful for that, but I am grateful for what I became because of it. Stronger, wiser, more careful, but also more compassionate, because I know what it feels like to be betrayed. I'm more conscious of how I treat others. This experience didn't make me harder. It made me more complete. Yesterday, a young developer came to interview for a position on my team. 26 years old, fresh out of grad school, eyes full of dreams and ambition, reminded me so much of myself 5 years ago. At the end of the interview, he asked, "What's the most important thing you look for in team members?" I thought about it for a moment. Talent is important, skills matter, but you know what I value most? Integrity. Because I've seen firsthand what happens when someone has all the talent in the world, but no integrity. It destroys everything. I'd rather work with someone who's still learning, but is honest, than with a genius who's dishonest. He nodded, understanding. And the second thing, I added, is the courage to speak up. If you see something wrong, say something. If you disagree with a decision, voice it. I never want anyone on this team to stay silent because they're afraid. We learn from each other here. I hired him. He starts next week. People ask me if I hate Minho. Honestly, I don't. I did, for a while. The rage was consuming, but eventually I realized that hating him was giving him power over me. He'd already taken 3 years of my life. I wasn't going to give him any more, so I let it go. Not the accountability. He still needs to face consequences for what he did, but the personal hatred. That's gone. He's just a cautionary tale now, a lesson about what not to be, a reminder that short-term gain through dishonesty always leads to long-term destruction. His legacy is ruin. Mine is rebuilding. I'll take rebuilding every time. Next month, we're launching a new feature on the platform, a tool specifically designed to help micro-businesses in rural Korea access global markets. It's something I've wanted to do for years, but Minho always said it wasn't profitable enough. Now I can finally do it. Because profitability isn't just about money, it's about impact. It's about knowing that the code I write, the systems I build, actually make a difference in people's lives. That young woman in Jeju Island who makes traditional crafts and can now sell them worldwide because of our platform, that's profit. That family business in Gangwon-do that increased their income by 40% using our tools, that's profit. That's what I built this for. Not for magazine covers or valuations or investor parties, for real people doing real work. Kim Sora, my lawyer, has become a friend. We have lunch once a month, talk about life beyond lawsuits and courtrooms. You know what's interesting? She said last time we met. Most people who go through what you went through become bitter, closed off, unable to trust again. But you're not like that. I'm working on it, I said. Some days are harder than others, but you're still trying. That takes courage. She's right. It does take courage. It takes courage to stay open after being hurt, to still believe in people after being betrayed, to still dream after watching a dream burn down. But that's the only way to really live. The alternative is to close yourself off completely, to never take risks, to never trust anyone. That's not living. That's just existing. And after everything I've been through, I refuse to just exist. Sometimes, late at night when the office is empty and I'm alone with my code, I allow myself to feel proud. Not proud of what happened, not proud of the battle, but proud of how I handled it. I could have given up, could have accepted the settlement offers, could have walked away and started over somewhere else. But I didn't. I fought. I stood my ground. I demanded justice. And I won. That's something no one can ever take away from me. The tech industry in Korea has changed because of this case. There's now more awareness about founder agreements, about proper documentation, about protecting yourself legally even when you trust someone. Law firms are doing more startup consultations. Accelerators are teaching founders about cap tables and shareholder agreements. Universities are including these topics in entrepreneurship courses. If my pain can prevent someone else from going through the same thing, then it means something. In Korea, we have another saying, Gusuli seo malirado gue oya bobe, which means, even if you have 3,000 pearls, they're worthless unless you string them together. I had all the pieces, the talent, the work ethic, the technical skills, the innovation, but I didn't string them together with the protection I needed. Now I know better. Now I help others know better. That's my real legacy. Not the company, not the technology, but the awareness that you can trust people and still protect yourself. That hope and caution aren't opposites. They're partners. As I finish writing this, the sun is setting over Seoul. The city lights are starting to flicker on, millions of them, each one representing a dream, a struggle, a story. Somewhere out there, someone is probably making the same mistake I made. Trusting too much, not reading the fine print, believing that good intentions are enough. I hope they find this story. I hope they learn from my mistakes. I hope they protect themselves before it's too late. But if it is too late, if they're already in the middle of their own betrayal, their own fight, their own dark night of the soul, I hope they know this. You can survive it. You can fight back. You can win. It won't be easy. It will hurt. You'll question everything, yourself, your judgment, your worth. There will be days you want to give up. But don't, because on the other side of that pain is a version of yourself you never knew existed. Stronger, wiser, unbreakable. The betrayal tried to destroy me. Instead, it forged me. And that's the truth that Minho, and everyone like him, will never understand. You can steal someone's company, their work, their dreams. But you can't steal their ability to rebuild. You can't steal their resilience. You can't steal who they become when they rise from the ashes. I'm standing in those ashes now, and I'm not just surviving. I'm thriving. Remember, the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's reconstruction. It's building something better than before, something they can never touch, something that proves their betrayal didn't break you. It made you unbreakable. Today, I don't own just half a company. I own myself, my integrity, my truth, my future. And that's worth more than any empire. Tentar novamente.